Well, maybe you could just sing the intro.
I know. Hey, welcome everybody to another edition of Think with a Drink. This is the weekly webinar series brought to you by the Aries Foundation for Financial Education. And this is a fun one for us. Yes, Craig, I knew I didn't connect the music on that. So apologies to the crowd out there that the music didn't play, unfortunately, but I figured I'd just let it run. You know, what the heck. So there we are. It's a fun one for us. We're going into Memorial Day. It's a long weekend. We didn't want to get into anything heavy or too, crazy in terms of it. So this is a real light and fun one for us. This is beers, barbecue, and summer fare. Basically a food and beer pairing special. What food to pair with what beer type of thing.
Get it out? My gosh.
All right, God bless. And we got our jerseys on because we're in the picture with the jerseys. So that was the tie-in there in terms of going through that. Real quick, Think with a Drink is brought to you by the Aries Foundation for Financial Education. We are a nonprofit. You can find us on the web. That's ariesfoundation.org. My name is Tom Alessi. I am the president of the Aries Foundation. I have been in financial services now for 24 years. I'm an investment advisor. That means I act as a fiduciary whenever I'm giving guidance or advice to any of my clients. I want to introduce and bring in my vice president. Craig, if you could introduce yourself.
Sure. So I'm Craig Richardson. I'm the vice president of the Aries Foundation. I've been in financial services about 19 years now, and I specialize in working with families and individuals, helping them define their financial goals.
And Craig will be chiming in as we go along here. We call this Think with a Drink because really what we're trying to do is make money matters, finance, a little bit more relatable, a little less intimidating, a little bit easier maybe to comprehend. And we couldn't think of a better way to do that than if we have something cold to sip on while we're talking about this stuff. And so for tonight, what we've got on tap for us is Canal Street. They bill this as a crushable ale. Now, I've never heard of crushable ale as a category, and we're going to talk about categories later, and crushable ale does not come as a category. I believe this is a Kolsch. It's a sort of a cross between Pilsner and a lager type of thing, but very light, very crisp. I mean, this thing comes in at 3.9% ABV, Craig. So this is very low alcohol content. This is meant like to water. Essentially, that's the idea. The whole idea here is you get some fruitiness, supposedly a little spice like in an ale, but it's got a cleaner finish. That's the whole idea of a Kolsch than a pale lager.
Ah, okay.
Skål.
Skål.
Yeah, you get that. You get that almost that clean taste to the palate when you drink that. It does. There's nothing that really is. It does feel like it's sort of washing over you. I think it's definitely crushable. I will say that.
Yeah.
I don't know how long this is going to hang out on the show with me, but
be gone by the next 3 slides.
Right? Yeah. All right. So the agenda, we're going to go through quickly a little guideline for pairing, right? We're going to do tastes in beer, basically different type of taste to be thinking about. And then we're going to go through the slide of each beer, light to dark, because that's the way I like to drink them. If I've got a flight, I go light to dark. It's funny, Craig and I were at a wine tasting, and they were talking about they do the same thing with wines. They start you out with light and go to dark, which is the same thing we do when we do flights with beer. We'll start light and work our way to the dark side of things.
Whenever I think about beer, I think about flights. You should be always drinking when you're taking a flight. Yeah.
Yes. Always getting drunk on the plane, right?
Especially pilot, yes.
So the guideline to pairing, so think of this as 3 C's, right? Contrast, complement, and cleanse, right? Contrast would be I'm offsetting. Like if I've got something that's spicy, I want something that's going to sort of offset that. I want something that's going to sort of bring that either the flavor out or, you know, cool down that spice. Like a spice, this would probably be something good to be drinking with something that's got a little spice to it because it's very clean and crisp and goes right over. So you'd probably wash that out. Complement sort of the same idea there, right? These are tastes that if it's sweet and salty, you know, I'm going to try to bring something that's going to bring a little bit to it. You know, Mexican, I'm going to, you know, maybe, or Asian, I'm going to bring something that's got a little bit more of that citrus and fruit to it.
A lime or something like that.
Right. And then cleanse, that's another thing that this would be used for. Like this Kolsch would be just to cleanse the palate, right? I'm just trying to you know, I'm just trying to make sure that I don't have any residual of whatever it was I just ate. I'm moving on to another course, maybe another beer type of thing.
But I tell people when I'm drinking, I'm just cleansing. I'm not drinking.
Yes, we're just cleansing.
I'm just cleansing my palate.
I'm just cleansing. And then the last one there is to avoid overpowering flavors. Like you don't want to be matching up something that's just like the beer because it's dark and heavy is just going to overwhelm the flavor and the taste. So like you wouldn't take like Guinness and match it with like oysters type of thing. You wouldn't do something that's going to just take away the flavor, or salmon. Actually, oysters might go a stout. They might go there. So that was a bad play by me. More like salmon. I was trying to think of something in the seafood
restaurant taste. Maybe a haddock would be something.
Yeah, something that would just get lost. It would just get, you know, it would just, the beer would completely, and you'd lose the taste of whatever the food was that, you know, right. Yeah.
Like calamari. Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So just know that the idea there is you're really trying to think about, gee, what am I drinking? What am I eating? And how am I sort of either complementing or contrasting those flavors? And everybody's palate's a little bit different. So you can always play with this.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then, you know, tastes, you know, hops are always thought about being bitter, but not all hops are bitter. Right. Mm-hmm. Some hops bring that citrus, that aroma, that taste to it. You know, you've got that more of that part of it. You know, bitter is what, you know, that's the other side to it, is you do have that, but it's not the bitter, you know, it's just that aftertaste that comes along with it.
Some are brewed to be bitter.
Correct, exactly. And malts are the same way, right? Some malts are heavier, some malts come more to the fore, some are in the background. So it just depends on, you know, whether they're light or they're roasted, or, you know, and where they go. And then, you know, dark and light, the beers, you know, they themselves have that sort of, you almost think of like the dark beer being heavier, almost like wine, like it's hanging on your palate, versus a light beer, which is like this thing is just washing over it.
Right. Right.
All right, before we get started, we do want to tell everybody we are not going to talk to you about beer, but we will talk to you about anything else in the financial aspect of your life. Part of the goal of the Aries Foundation is trying to help everyone have a better relationship with their money. Because whether you realize it or not, you are in a relationship with money. And just like every other personal relationship that you have in your world, there are behaviors and triggers that will cause you to act irrationally sometimes when dealing with your money and your finances. All Craig, myself, the rest of the Aries team that we try to do is try to help everybody have a little better understanding of some of those triggers, some of those whys, Craig, right? Why it happens. Why do I do this? Or why did I spend that way?
Absolutely right. Just to give you a dispassionate third-party view of what's going on. Sometimes you need that because your emotions get tied to your money and it's hard to separate.
Absolutely. And so that's what we try to do. But you can just shoot that QR code for those who might be watching on the video recording. Shoot the QR code. That'll open up our calendar. We're happy to have a conversation with you. You know, we really do want to talk to you about what's going on in your financial world. Yes, we can sprinkle a little beer talk in at the end, but you know, we're always open to have a conversation. All right, let's get into this, Craig. We are going to start with light lagers. Right.
Ooh,
so light lagers, well, that's where we're going to start. Right. So we're talking about pairing the food with it. So, you know, light lagers, again, this is that contrast, right? So buffalo wings, right? Spicy, you know, you want something light on the, that's going to complement that. Right. That's going to go through it. French fries. You're going to, you know, pull the salt out with the French fries. Hot dogs. It's funny. I did bring up hot dogs later, but that's funny. I forgot that was on there. Noodles and fried fish, like you talked about, like haddock, that white fried fish type of thing. You know, these are generally the palest, you know, light lagers. They don't have strong flavor. You know, not really like this one, not a lot of hop, not a lot of bitter to it. It just is what it is. And basically it pairs well with a lot of stuff.
I had a weird uncle who liked to put salt in his light beer. I don't know what that was about.
So it's very funny story with that, because a lot of times what would happen is when the beers keg beer tends to go a little flat.
Yeah.
If you put salt in it, you'll get the head will pop. You'll get the bubbles.
Oh,
So he
Pulls it
might have
apart.
he might either have been used to it or wanted more of the bubbles, wanted more bubbles, more
Pull
fizz
the
in his.
carbonation out. Is that what it does?
Yeah, it accentuates the carbonation. It does throw off you can't put a lot in, because if you do, you're just gonna get a mouthful of salt. Be like seawater beer, right? Like I tried to take a can under the ocean.
Right. Yeah, the osmosis thing. Yes.
Right, but that's what it would do. It would up the carbonation. If you've got a flat beer, like you put a little salt in there, and you'll actually be able to drink it.
I thought he was just skipping the pretzel. That's what I thought.
He was trying to cut down. So he was ahead of his time. He was trying to get rid of the carbs. All right. What's next? What's next? Oh, your category. Wheats.
Wheat beers. I like these too.
Wheats, right?
Mhm.
So again, same thing. This is wheats are wheat and barley grains, which gives them a much smoother texture, lighter carbonation than most just about any other of the beers. Wheat doesn't, the grain itself doesn't really add a lot of flavor. So that's why most wheat beers that you see out there are they've got a citrus in them. There's some sort of, like we were drinking Jack's Abbey's, theirs was a rattler, but the blood orange wheat, that's what I was trying to think of.
Yeah, I like that one. Yeah.
Right, but that's again, they're adding the citrus to it because they're trying to add some flavor to it to bring that out, because the wheat beer itself really doesn't have a lot.
I drink grass, right?
Not really. It doesn't come across that bland, but
Right.
but it doesn't give you any of like a malt or a caramel or any of the roasteds would do that on that. So you can see it's very similar to a pale ale, the buffalo wing, spicy noodles, but then gets more into some of those salads. Like, so if we're having a summer salad along with our barbecue, fruit tarts, those are often served as dessert, and other pastries. Wheat beers, wheat beers tend to really line up well with summer and barbecue, basically.
So you would drink this with a cannoli? Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, you could. Not really.
But what beer would you drink with a cannoli? Is that coming up?
No, I did not put cannoli on there. I do have some specific examples. I was thinking Summer Fare, not really thinking cannoli when I'm thinking of Summer Fare. All right, now we go to the mainstay, the IPA, the India Pale Ale. Like, this is,
I think it is like all beer.
This is like the broad category that pretty much started craft beer as an entity and as a following, right? So, IPAs, generally medium color, right? They're amber, depending on, like you said, Greg, some of them, they'll brew them to be more bitter. That's how they let the hops in there, and then you get, some of them that are dry hopping, that's adding more just of the aroma and the flavor. But you got citrus, you got herb, you got all sorts of stuff. And then you got, the crazy people doing the double IPAs and the hazy and all that stuff that goes on. But as you can see, again, why it's very popular is because it pretty much will stand up to anything, right? Barbecue ribs, steaks, burritos, fajitas, any of the spice and the meat, it'll blend very, very well with all of that stuff. So, that's why you go into any bar, there's usually at least 4 IPAs on tap, because it's going to stand up to what's being served.
Well, wasn't the IPA originally developed hundreds of years ago, a different brewing process, so that it actually would last months, like in sea and stuff like that when it's being
correct
traded?
Yes, the idea of the IPA was originally brewed in Derby, which is spelled Derby but pronounced Derby, England, Derby.
Oh,
And they would ship to India, that the soldiers would be given bottles to take with them, and that's what they would have for rations to go to India. And so that's how it
Oh.
became India Pale Ale, because they were brewing it, but they had to brew it in such a way that it would not spoil on the trip over.
Right.
So yes,
Well,
you were
that's fine.
correct. You did have
Yeah.
it right. Yes, but that's
But what a recruiting tool. Hey, join the army, we'll give you beer.
yeah. I don't remember how much.
Part of
Only
your-
the only reason I know is because I happen to spend some time in Derby, England, right? You know, it's
Oh, okay.
and that's where the original was done. So there's this whole story on it there.
Neat.
All right, now we're getting into my realm of the world. We're getting a little darker, getting into the dark stuff. So ambers, right? So these are medium, you know, you're gonna feel these when you drink them, right? They go anywhere from some sort of that amber to a deep, you know, sort of reddish gold type of color.
Mhm.
You get flavors malts and caramel and roasted, depending on what they're doing and you know the type that it is.
Because the sweeter flavors in the ambers is what you're saying.
Well, right, but they're not overpowering sweet. So yes, you do get some of that sweetness
And
from
some
that.
caramel or whatever.
Right, but they tend to be dry, they tend to be crisp.
Mhm.
Not a lot of that like IPA, that burst of the hop with an
Mhm.
amber, right? It's there's hops in it, but they've got a little bit more lighter of that aroma. And you can see just, you know, barbecue pulled pork, right? Jerk chicken, pizza, brisket. These are things that are again going to be a little bit more heavier and a little bit more spicier, that the amber will offset that because it's not going to overwhelm it.
Yep. It complements it well.
That's a compliment. Yes.
Mhm.
All right. Now this is my homage here, because I love brown ales. I love brown and red ales, and brown and red ales are typically, I don't want, how do you say this in a nice way?
Mhm.
Like the beer people like turn their nose up at them. They if you look at most breweries, they're not brewing a brown or a red ale,
You
right?
think there's
Because
some snobbery that goes on with the brown ales? Is that
yes, this snobbery, this like this, you know, the redheaded stepchild in the beer world, because you can't do a lot to it. You can't make these extremes. You can't go crazy with all of these, you know, the hazes and the IPAs and the million, you know, the double hop, triple hop, blah blah blah, all that stuff.
yeah.
You can't get crazy with it. There's a limited amount of craziness that can go on in these ales.
Yeah, but I've had some that I just did not care for, and I have some that I think were fantastic.
Yeah, no. You can run a gamut on it, because yeah, that depends on the malts they're using and the
Mhm.
hops. So there is
Yep.
a combination there. You've got, you know, you've got English brown, you've got American brown, you've got different ways to the brewing and how that happens. But generally, from a food standpoint,
Mhm.
these are the Mac Daddy. These things pair with just about anything when we're talking about barbecue. And we're talking about barbecue, you know, sausage and pork and anything, you know, fish and sushi, you name it. This is gonna pair well with just about anything that you're throwing onto a grill
Mhm.
that you have, in Greg's case, killed and decided you were going to eat.
And this is if you're going to drink a warm beer, isn't this what you'd be drinking? A brown?
Not necessarily the brown or the red. We'll get the next ones coming, right? So
Oh, okay.
the ones that we're
Other
going
levels of dark.
darker from here,
Oh,
right?
wow.
We go
Okay.
we go even darker.
Yeah,
Yes, but we're
okay,
going,
Arnold.
huh?
Okay, Arnold.
Yes,
Oh, DACA.
darker. And speaking of which, we go to the porter, right?
Ah.
Yes. So, you know, porters, you know, a little bit milder, say, than, but you know, definitely dark, toasted aroma, you know, brown malts, so strong notes, chocolate, caramel, coffee, all of those things come out in porters. Porters you can get funky with, you know, this is where you start getting into the whole vanilla and peanut butter and banana and all this craziness that goes on there. They're thick, a little, silky to the palate, but
Mhm.
they're crisper than a stout, right? We're
Hmm.
going to talk about stouts next. That's the last one because that's as dark as you can pretty much go.
Right.
But as you can see with a porter, so on the seafood side, if we're, summer fare, if you're having lobster or crab, a porter is very good to have with that. The
Hmm.
Mexican mole, again, barbecue, it's going to hold up nicely because it's got the body and strength to hold up to, a steak on the grill or anything like that. Or like for you, your very gamey stuff, whatever you've shot and
Right.
taken out. A porter is what you would want to drink with that.
My Hassenpfeffer.
Yes, cook, where's my Hassenpfeffer?
Or my roadkill, whatever I'm eating that day.
Yes.
Oh, on a shovel, right?
And then we come to the stout, right?
Mhm.
So this is dark. This is, these are black, dark, roasted. They're very similar to porters,
Mhm.
but they're not as high in content in alcohol. Like, this whole thing with Guinness. Guinness is not does not have a high ABV.
Well, Guinness is a stout.
Yes.
I did not find that when I was in England. I did not find that strong. I thought it would be a heavier beer than it was.
That's what I'm saying is that they're not.
They're
They're,
not. Okay.
they're not. They're because they don't have a lot of high alcohol content.
Oh, okay.
Now you
Hmm.
can get some that can be brewed. See, when we get to the extremists, they can push them out there and make heavy stouts. But generally, stouts as a category are not, right. And again,
Hmm.
same idea with a porter. You get the chocolate, the coffee, a very smooth consistency. But they're wonderful pairing with desserts.
Ah, okay.
There's a if you really were trying to pair a food with a dessert, it would be a stout, right? Because
This is where you have a cannoli.
yes, this is what you would have the cannoli with, especially if you got the little, the chocolate coating on it
Oh
or chocolate
yeah,
chips in it, that
yeah.
type of thing. Yes, this would be what you would pair with the cannoli, right? So you see that the truffles, the mousse, lobster, barbecue, shellfish. This again is if you were, that's what I was saying is, oysters would probably work here, but salmon or like we talked about, light fish wouldn't, right?
I've had mousse. It does not taste like chocolate. I thought it might.
Yes.
I've never seen a chocolate. I've seen brown mousse. I don't think I've ever seen a chocolate mousse.
Never seen a chocolate one. I could do the whole Monty Python thing with you. I had a sister who got bit by a moose. All right. So lastly on Summer Fare, this is sort of so it actually was in a previous screen. I didn't realize it, but because I put it in here because it's one of those things that if you're out at a barbecue and you're thinking about like, okay, well, what are we serving? If I'm serving Craig hot dogs, what should I be pairing with a hot dog?
Was this a quiz? We should have put like a panel quiz up there.
Oh, that
I
would
would
have been a good
say,
idea.
yeah, right. We could have put in the, but anyway, hot dog. I'm thinking uh lighter beer.
Pale or red ale? The
Pale.
red
Okay.
ale will actually work with it because again, it's a complement thing, right? It's not so much, but the pale ale works there.
Mm-hmm.
Now a little bit harder for you. Macaroni salad.
Oh, I'd say lighter still. I would
Yes.
say,
Pale
yes.
ale. Very good. Yeah.
Mhm.
Now a strange one because we're going off the board on it, like corn on the cob.
I'd say a Pilsner.
Well, actually, close, but your favorite. It's a wheat.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah, right. You
The
figure,
corn,
okay,
starch, the wheat, right? Yeah.
yeah, as far as going through it. So it sort of gives you that sense of, look, there's no wrong or right answer to any of this. But the idea is if you're trying to pair foods, just remember sort of the four rules there with the three C's, which is, is complement, contrast, or cleanse. So which one that you're trying to do and find the one that fits for you. Just don't pick up that, the brown bottle with the blue label that's in a lot of hot water right now in terms of trying to deal with everything. We won't mention them, and just think that that's tasting in beer and what it's going to mix with, because there's so many combinations that you can do with food and beer, and ways that you can try this stuff just like wine. Like beer pairs very, very well with food, and really just trying to find, gee, this fits, you know, in terms of what I'm trying to have and what I'm trying to do. So that's sort of the idea. It's Memorial Day. I'm sure everybody's going to at some point light a grill and throw some sort of dead animal onto it, unless you're vegetarian. Then the wheat beer or those light beers will be fine for you in terms of dealing with the grilled veggies.
Your mushroom burger, yes.
Yeah, well, you know, what is it nowadays? It's the fake burger, right?
The
what is
fake
that?
meat, yeah.
Yeah, the fake. I didn't even try. That's a God bless. I wouldn't even know how to start on that. But maybe that's the next pair and try to figure it out. What pairs with fake meat? So that was our show for today. As we said, for everybody out there, if you're listening, if you're watching, you know, just know anytime you have questions, anytime you're unsure. We got a lot of stuff going on in the world. We didn't want to get into it because, like I said, we're going into Memorial Day weekend. But, you know, between all the factors out there, the debt ceiling and recession and inflation and interest rates and everything else that's going on, if you're unsure, reach out, have a conversation. That's why we're here. We're here trying to connect, help everybody, like we said, have that better relationship with their money so that you can feel a little bit more in control, a little bit more empowered in terms of what's going on.
And if you're really nervous about your money, don't, you know, keep Pabst Blue Ribbon on your mind.
Yes. So we
Don't
keep
drinking a Pabst.
yeah, there's nothing wrong with Pabst. It's actually a good beer. We keep Think with a Drink going with what's on tap. So next week we're going to do Take the Stress Out of Summer Vacation, because everybody wants to get away. So how can you do it and not have as much stress in terms of trying to take your time away and enjoy yourself? And then on 6-8, we're sort of following on a thing we did last year for a couple of episodes, which were the best places to retire. Now we're going to talk about the worst places to retire. And we'll give you maybe an alternative or some other thought to, if that's where you were thinking about or where you were targeting, you know, you might try this place instead.
Siberia, is that not a good place?
Yeah, Siberia. Some no more cold. I don't like the cold. So if you ever want to get a hold of us, you can, like we said, you can go to the website. It's ariesfoundation.org. You can reach out to us at info@ariesfoundation.org. We're always happy to answer a question. But the easiest thing to do is just shoot that QR code. And again, if you're watching on the channel or watching on a video, just shoot the you know, pause it, obviously, instead of trying to do it as we're going along. Shoot the QR code, unless you're way more coordinated than I am, and just have that it'll pull up our calendar, and you can just book a time. And there's no cost, there's no obligation. We're just here to have a conversation. Let's chat and see if there's something we can help you out with. And on that note, I am going to say, Craig, Skol, enjoy the Memorial Day weekend.
You too, buddy.